Here's a juicy stat for you. 20% of Nottingham Forest's Premier League goals this season have been scored against us. I'm sure this neither shocks nor surprises any Spurs fan. Look, we were all right for 43 minutes, quite enthusiastic, positive, if lacking in joined-up attacking strategy and real threat, and then we conceded one of those goals. Now, allegedly, Spence and Van de Ven had a fierce half-time debate over who was to blame, and maybe Igor thought they both were. That might be the reason that the subs came on and everything went to hell. We didn't so much come out for the second half as politely declined to participate. Porro was stationary as Hudson-Odoi danced past him, while Romero ambled and Pap didn't bother to track back. After that, we had to endure Romero's full thighs while he dithered over the ball like he didn't know what it was for. Micky looked a yard off it, which is worrying because his whole thing is yards. There was a pre-match Churchillian social media call to arms. There was a big welcome for the team coach, flags, atmosphere. It was just like we'd won something, wasn't it? Remember that? Did that pile pressure on the players by making the occasion too big? Well, aren't all games big? Sad news, of course, about the manager's bereavement, but without sounding heartless, is this the perfect excuse for the parting of the ways? If so, who's coming in? We'll discuss all this and more, plus Room 101, some dodgy impressions and some swearing. Strap in, it's Nice One, Cyril.
Nice one, Cyril.
So, welcome to Nice One, Cyril. With me today are Julie Welch, who's promised not to swear until she starts speaking, Kev Acott, who's still Googling Adi Hutla, and a lunatic who travelled a total of 800 miles thinking we were going to win, Barry Graham. Let's crack on. Julie doesn't want to answer the first question, so I'm going to put it to Barry. It wasn't terrible in the first half, but that kind of goal was inevitable, wasn't it? Just a nothing goal, 44 minutes, perfect timing. And after that, a kind of a painful, aching vacuum.
Yeah, I mean, it was so predictable, the fact that we had so many corners before them and did nothing, and then they got two in, I think, quick succession. And I said to my son, you know what's going to happen here? They're going to score. It's so inevitable. We've actually been quite good at corners, scoring from corners this season, but none of them seemed to threaten. And yeah, it was so predictable the way that we just folded. And that's, I'm afraid, the mentality of this team. They huffed and puffed quite well initially, but I mean, issues over selection. We weren't particularly impressive when it was long ball stuff, but we were probably the better of two bad teams. But this team just has no heart when things go against them. And I just didn't see a way back after that. It was just dismal stuff. I mean, not a dreadful performance until then, but the second half was nothing. This team just doesn't seem to have anything when the chips are down. They just fold.
That's exactly right. And I think some interesting, some odd changes. We were doing well enough in the first half to assume, Kev, we might just continue in the second half with that lineup. I didn't think Van de Ven looked that comfortable at left back. The winger got the wrong side of him, Hutchison, a couple of times, but he was okay. And we were doing all right. And then suddenly he's gone. Udogie comes on and off goes Spence. And, Porro goes to right back. And it just crumbled.
I think we sort of pulled ourselves back into it. But we didn't ever really look like creating very much, even in the first half. There was effort going in. They were trying. There was some motivation there, I think. But we were poor. We were almost like a relegation team. I think there was probably 60,000 people, Barry, sort of saying, I think this is going to be a goal soon. They did feel this inevitability about it.
Julie, can I ask you a question now, or are you still
Go on.
being shy?
Fill your boots.
Okay, good. Okay, here we go. Your mate with the good haircut, Van de Ven, I feel he's lost a yard somewhere along the way. That might just be confidence. It might just be in his head. Who knows? But I'm more worried, to be honest, about Romero, who got into that weird thing that he does when, things are going against us, of just sort of standing on the ball and nudging it a yard here and a foot there and an inch here and an inch there, looking for the perfect pass, and it's not on. You might as well lump it and give it to Solanke and or let him chase something. I'm not saying that's the only problem, but I do feel Romero is a big problem.
Well, he's not tracking back. I mean, isn't he off to Argentina for the international break? So he's probably kind of taking it easy because he doesn't want to get injured before he goes to represent his country. To hell with him. I was going to say, we're going to do a room 101 later. And actually, I was sort of saving my feelings for Romero till then. But he is definitely room 101. As for VDV, I don't know whether he has lost confidence. Maybe he's just kind of drifted away from the team mentally. I think he's looking to leave. He shouldn't have had any trouble on the wing because hasn't he played for the Netherlands on the wing? I can't think that he has lost pace. Maybe there's just a general sort of feeling defeated in his head, which is what you get when you're kind of depressed. This is a relegation side, I'm afraid. I don't want to be depressing, but I just cannot see any way that we're going to get out of this. There are no leaders in the team. I mean, Romero's meant to be our leader, but there is a leadership group. Where were they?
There is the legend of the leadership group, which supposedly includes Porro, Vicario and Romero. Arguably three of our least reliable players these days. I've never been much of a fan of Porro. I know Kev don't think much of him either. So is that a problem then, that our mature players, our players with vast international experience are not pulling their weight for one reason or another? I don't suppose it's conscious. I think there's some deep subconscious reason that they're incapable of producing their best. But if the others are looking up to these people and seeing fucking Flappy smack it straight into touch twice in the second half when we're chasing the game, it must be pretty galling and dispiriting.
It drives me nuts as well when he stands on the ball and does nothing. He is making a point, I think, that there's no runners, no movement, and he's right in that sense. But it does look a bit performative. We heard so much from Ange last season about how he was this, sort of talismanic figure in the squad that they all looked up to, World Cup winner, etc. Is he being cowed by the criticism of his discipline? Micky's obviously had discipline issues as well with the red card the other week. I don't know if it's a perfect storm of just their confidence going, missing games and not having that much sharpness. Plus, I think there's an element of a kind of unhealthy clique there. I feel that's just this idea that I know they've not been there forever, but this group of players just keeps getting manager sacked. And, there's no sense of looking inwards at themselves and saying, maybe we're the problem a bit here. I just think they're players looking for excuses. They are great players and they will be great players again. Micky, I'm talking about, and Romero, probably when they leave us and join other clubs. But I think it's telling for both of them that really the character's not been there in a weakened side that needs them, a weak and struggling side. I think that does say something about them and their character. You've got to be more than a fair weather player who's good in a good team. Romero has to be the one that grabs us by the scruff of the neck. And he didn't. He certainly didn't do it yesterday. I had hoped he would come back from that 4-match suspension, chastened and you've got in this horrific mess when I've been out of action due to my own misdemeanors. I'll make it up to you guys. But we're not seeing it yet. leaders are guys like Archie Gray at the moment, who's standing up there, showing the attitude you'd expect them all to show, as well as being probably our best player. So, yeah, I mean, it's deeply disappointing. I feel that it's a club that at the moment is having a kind of collective nervous breakdown. And I hope certainly Romero would be one to take a grip of that situation. Didn't see it yesterday. Whether we will in the coming weeks and whether it's too late, I'm probably with Julie on that now. Yesterday was probably the moment that broke me at the acceptance really kind of kicked in. I'm sure we'll come on to that, but yeah.
Yeah, we will. I mean, Kev, we just sticking with Romero for a second. There's an argument that he's having to play within himself because, a couple of bookings and he's out again, and he would then face even more criticism as the captain that he keeps getting himself suspended. But I can't believe a player of his experience, of his ability, is at least consciously holding back. And, as we've said before, as we've just said, this business of just standing on the ball and, we're chasing the game, we're 2 down, is concerning. It looks performative. And then, of course, just let's have a look at the goal, the second goal. Porro was a statue as Hudson-Odoi went past him. What the fuck was Romero doing? He was ambling back. And, all right, maybe other players should be covering Gibbs-White, but what's he doing? He's the captain. Shouldn't he be busting a gut?
He absolutely should. I don't know. 2 names just came to mind there, Steve Perryman and Graham Roberts. And I was just thinking they wouldn't probably have got themselves into the same disciplinary situation. They'd have been a bit clever about it. But they would not be fearful. I think you might be right. There's a fear there, a disciplinary fear there that he has. I didn't think, until right now, I didn't think of his standing on the ball doing nothing thing as performative. I just thought it just showed a lack of imagination and, to be fair to him, a lack of options. And I think he started doing that under Ange, didn't he? And whether he'd had instructions at that point that had just still stuck with him, when the ball comes to you, control it, take your time. I don't know. But that was the worst I've seen him play yesterday. It was just awful. And now I've got to come up with someone else to put in room 101 because I too had him down.
He saves himself for Argentina, doesn't put himself out. He'll make sure he's injured or he's not playing for some reason so that he's at his best for Argentina. There was an interview with him afterwards, and, he was in his pidgin English. He was talking about it's 7 cup finals from here, and when I come back from international duty, it's going to, we're going to go for it. It all feels too late to me, and Nottingham Forest are in the same ship we're in, but they turned up with a plan. They look like adults in the room compared to our bunch of, headless chickens who just looked like kids. It wasn't serious what we were doing. They were serious. They turned up with a serious intent and a determination, a collective determination. And in the face of that, after they scored, I mean, we had nothing.
And that's been the case for, at least 1.5 seasons, in fact. You say they came with intent and were serious about it. We are not a serious club anymore. It just has to be recognised. I mean, apart from Archie Gray, it's very hard to put your finger on any player who actually wanted to give it a go. They're demoralised, or they're on holiday already. They've accepted that they might not be here next season. They'll be going to a club which, might have more serious intent. The whole club has turned into a joke. I will support Spurs forevermore because, that is the curse that has been laid on me. But it is really, really off-pissing to have to support Spurs at the moment. And I think that what did come to my mind when, at the end of the Forest game, I had to sort of hunt around in my memory for the right quote and it was from Hemingway about going bankrupt. How did you go bankrupt? Gradually, then suddenly. You can either sort of say it started in May and when we won the trophy, and the first few weeks of the season with Thomas Frank seemed okay, and then it all just started tipping down, and then it's happened suddenly. But I think it's been going on for some seasons, what's happening to us now. I never thought that I wonder whether this is Levy's revenge in a way, in some psychic way.
I mean, it's an interesting thought, isn't it? That, somehow Levy is watching over this and in his evil lair, somewhere in the mountains, he's thinking, he's kind of kissing his ring and, yes, this is going so well. Barry, as I was walking back to my bicycle, my electric bike, to go home, I suddenly realised I felt relieved. And in fact, I was listening on the radio. I'd left a tiny bit early and heard the third goal on the radio. And I felt relieved. I thought to myself, do you know what? I'm there. I'm accepting relegation because we've got nothing. We've got 7 games left. We're not going to get a point. And it was quite striking for me that I stopped, some of the tension left. And by the time I got home, 15 minutes later, I was quite calm. Now, you poor sod, you had a 400-mile journey back to Glasgow. A lot of time to ruminate on whether or not you've got to that point in your life where relegation is a reality and you can deal with it, or are you still hoping? I mean, to me, the only thing that can save us is West Ham. Where are you emotionally right now?
I'm actually finding it really tough. I'm in a few Facebook groups and a couple of folk have kind of pulled out just because the unrelenting misery of it. And I do find myself rationing now what I'm doing. I think yesterday I went from the stage, I don't know if quite accepted, I'm now just profound sadness. I'm beyond the anger. How the fuck have we got to this position? And I did see a good tweet last week from someone. He said, a club of Spurs stature to have got themselves in this position where we're looking like we're going to go down is not just a bit of mismanagement. It's kind of almost like Lehman Brothers off the scale, kind of, unforgivable mismanagement collectively to have got us there. I'm trying to make my peace with it, because I do think now it is going to happen. I'm like you, I can't see a logical way out. I did prior to Saturday, the previous 2 games, but I thought Shearer made a good point on Match of the Day on Saturday night. They turned up when there was no pressure in those 2 games. No one expected anything at Liverpool, and the tie was gone against Madrid, and they could still turn it on then. But he said the test of Spurs will be tomorrow. They're really up against it in a hugely tension-packed game, and they did fold. So I'm almost trying. I'm finding myself trying to emotionally not disengage because I can't do that, but withdraw, retreat. I'm thinking 3 weeks without a game, good. I'm trying to. It's almost come to there. This sounds tragically, OTT, but I'm sure a lot of us can recognise it. We've got partners and loved ones who don't, who just like, for fuck's sake, it's a game of football. Just, it's not the end of the world. But you do take it as your pride. I mean, I started following Spurs early 80s, so I'd never known us not being a top flight team. I didn't even have that season in the 70s that we were down. And it's part of your makeup and your DNA. And I find it that the thought just incredibly personally humiliating. And when it's been discussed on TV, and I'm trying to hide away, and I'm thinking all my friends and people who know me, as soon as they hear Tottenham, I'm not from a Tottenham supporting crowd, I'm not from North London. It's not like half the folk I know are Tottenham fans. For a lot of people who know me, it's like they hear Tottenham and they think of me. I don't mean that in a kind of narcissistic way, but I feel intense personal hurt. They're maybe not laughing because they know how seriously I take it. Are they pitying me? I just take it hugely personally, and it hurts. It hurts like hell.
We're all nodding here because I think we all feel the same way. By the way, my wife could not give a fuck about football. And so I don't even bother coming in looking crestfallen anymore because she's not going to take any notice. We've got this thing where if I start talking about Spurs, she'll start talking about flowers. And we know to shut up at that point. And in some respects, that works for me because then I haven't, I can just turn inwards and deal with it. But if only it were that simple. Kev, you and I were around during that relegation season. Was it 77?
77, 78,
yeah. And we were vapid, but I don't really remember it being this vapid. Certainly, as we went towards the end of the season, I thought there was a bit of fight about the team, but I might be misremembering that. It's a bloody long time ago. We'll obviously speculate about this because we've got 3 weeks without a game, thank fuck. So we will talk about this on the next couple of pods. But a lot of people are saying, well, look, we need to go down. We need to just clear the decks, freshen up. Of course, we don't know who would stay and who would go. We can take a pretty educated guess on that. But a lot of people are saying, well, if we go down, I can't see us coming straight back up. Again, I'm asking you to hypothesize over something almost impossible to predict. But where do you stand on that? Do you think it's, given that we're probably going to go down, are we ready to come straight back up?
No, because I think that depression isn't just going to disappear. I think the only way that collective depression will go is with new owners. And then there's even a yes, but there's even a way of negating that, I think, which is who the hell is going to buy us and just how unethical and horrible are they going to be? And then we have to deal with that and, pretend that we loved, whichever Middle Eastern country it was all along. I haven't logically accepted relegation quite yet. There's still this little bit of, and I think it's a rational hope. I certainly don't feel emotionally accepting at all. I do, and I think I'm still that step behind. I'm angry and I'm pissed off. Yesterday there was no need for that to happen and for that to be that humiliating, and it does feel personal, Barry. It really does. It feels like, particularly people who are not into football, one of the things they would say about me is, oh, he supports Spurs, he supports Tottenham. And they all know, even if they know nothing about football, they know about how badly we're doing. And that's just horrible. And it does feel like this is sort of reflected that, it's like somehow I'm part of this embarrassment. I've partly caused it. And people feel sorry. I was talking earlier to Simon. An otherwise lovely colleague of mine who unfortunately supports Arsenal. Well, a couple of things. One was she was, I think, genuinely feeling sorry for me and trying to cheer me up, but also saying, I don't believe you're going to go down. And that wasn't a logical thing. It was her saying, this can't be possible. Even as an Arsenal fan, it's not possible because Tottenham have always been a Premiership team since 77. I think the 3 weeks has come at a great time. I would like to hide in a cupboard for 3 weeks with absolutely no contact with anyone. I know that's not going to be possible, and the latest constant looking at Twitter is going to be, have they got rid of him yet? When are they going to get rid of him? Who's going to replace him? Blah, blah, blah. And, and I know I won't hide away as much as I should for my mental health. But it is affecting us. It's affecting thousands and thousands of people emotionally.
I wonder whether that pre-match outpouring was that a sort of a visceral demonstration of love. Let's show each other, let's show the team how much we care, how much we love the team. I will be talking about that a bit later, Room 101. But Julie, look, you have seen probably more than most, right?
My nose has seen the shit, basically. When I began my football reporting career, approaching the mid-70s, Spurs was still just a Division 1 side. It was coming to the end of Bill Nicholson's career. But you could the first time I reported a match, maybe the second time, I went to a game at the Lane. Bill Nicholson's regime was on its last legs. And you could just tell that this was a relegation side. I mean, they managed to hang on for 1.5, couple more seasons, but they just weren't good enough. And I just got that feeling now. But what I'm saying is because I've been through it before, I'm finding it hard to feel grief-stricken in a way because, it has happened before and we have come back before. What I do feel absolute rage about, I've just got to say this, is the fact that we've conceded the North London territory to the other side. I mean, it's not North London is ours anymore, or it won't be if we're relegated. They will have won the territory. Those bastards from Plumstead. I just can't stand the perfection of Arsenal. They have always got one over on us. It's just the ultimate humiliation that in a season where it looks as though we're for the drop, they are going to win the title. I just can't bear it. I really can't. That is what I feel. It's just rage, absolute rage.
I don't share that because I don't care about Arsenal one jot. I can only care about us. I haven't got any more room in my emotional locker. So it's very difficult for me to care. We're all, I think, expressing a similar kind of set of emotions. It's anger, but it's also that if only you could somehow break your emotional attachment. I've been in love with Spurs much longer than I've been with my wife. I think we've all got that issue, and you can't just sweep it under the carpet as much as you'd like to. It would be great, wouldn't it? It's only football. It's not. It's the very essence of what we think about a lot and do. So here's another thing that is troubling me, and possibly a related theme, Barry. I was looking out at the pitch on Sunday, and I was looking at those players, and I was thinking, do you know what? I don't feel connected to the team, and I don't feel connected to any players. There was always a Hoddle, or even a Gaza, or a Ginola, or there were players like Graham Roberts and Steve Perryman. You felt connected. Harry Kane, there was something. I just looked out there and I thought, I don't know you people. I'm here. I'm always here. I support you. And it's not just because they're shit collectively and individually. It's because I just don't feel it. I don't know, is that just me, or are you getting a sense of that?
Yeah, I know exactly where you're coming from. I think it is obviously easier to find attachments in good times. Delhi we clicked with because, he was this wide-eyed young kid who just came for peanuts and just turned into a superstar in a great team. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned him earlier, Archie Gray. I mean, to me, he's nailed on for lowest bar award ever, but player of the season for us because he's the only one we're latching on to him because he's barely, is he 20? And he seems to have more fight and spirit about him than anyone else. Yeah, it's a team, devoid of characters. I just don't know what to think of them. And he's someone like, I'm even finding myself but preferring to, we touched on Romero and Van de Ven, but someone like Dan, so at least he looks a good, honest footballer, no frills. At least he's 100%. I mean, we've got to that stage that things are that bad that just at least look like you care and that you're trying, which I know everyone says it is the bare minimum, but everyone, we get all this guff from the club channels and what have you, and with Romero before on the big screen with it, that the brooding message that we're feeling the pain the same as you, but they don't. They are going to go. They'll bugger off. The Forest did it. Hate this expression in football. They wanted it more. It's such a kind of vapid, kind of vacuous term, but and I think it kind of covers for the fact that players who are not as technically gifted getting a result over folk who are technically superior. But there's just a kind of wan kind of acceptance of it all, that it's just an apathy, collective apathy. And maybe it's just going to sound like a grumpy old man here, it's the amount of money they have and stuff that it doesn't really matter, and they'll go down and it will it really damage their CV? Romero will go wherever he goes, and it'll be, yeah, but they were a shit, the club had gone, I did all I could. We talked about our collective shame, and we've got bugger all to do with it. We're just invested emotionally in it. We're not at fault or responsible for the plight they're in. The players directly are. But I don't feel, or I don't see any visible evidence of this humiliation goal. How have I left this club in this situation? What have I played my part? It just seems to be, it's that, you get it. Even go back a couple of seasons, talk about Vicario and Porro. They're two classic examples. When we concede a goal, they'll look and they'll blame someone else. They'll call someone else out. It's never their fault. I don't think there's a togetherness. It's like someone else will take the rap. Someone else was at fault for that goal, not me, And that is just a collective thing. And I don't know if it's more manifest when things are going badly and you're looking for excuses. But yeah, it's just, you look out there and there's no one you can hang your hat on in the style of that Perryman.
You make a great point there. And we said this, I think, on last week's pod, that they're professional footballers and they're never going to care as much about the team as the fans. So that's fine. The minimum requirement is that they give it everything. They're paid a fortune and they give it everything. And that's what we expect. I was listening to a podcast today, a very inferior Spurs podcast today. And one of the things they were talking about is, well, look, Romero's going to go and Van der Ven's going to go. But they don't want their legacy to be that they helped take a club down. They don't want that on their CVs. And I thought, they couldn't give a fuck. They move on. They just move on and blithely get their 250 grand a week somewhere else. So it's very hard when you look around that team. As I said, I felt no connection. Actually, I did a little bit with Archie because he's the guy trying. I thought Tell was trying. And Beravel when he came on. But really, the overall sense is, all right, it's, we'll get alternative employment somewhere else. And that's a really nauseating feeling for us as fans.
Yeah, it is. It is. I mean, I think, so something we didn't mention earlier really was not starting with Xavi, who did put himself about and did a couple of magical, creative things against Atletico. The fact that he didn't start for us was a bizarre decision. I mean, someone said maybe he was injured, maybe that's the reason for not starting with him for 90 minutes. I don't know. But I think he is someone who hasn't completely got it together, but has shown that sort of motivation, has tried, even when he's been poor, has really tried. I'm not sure I think maybe 40% is about effort and commitment to the team and commitment to not going down, or lack of commitment to not going down. And 60% is just quality. They're just not good enough. And there's a combination of those things, really. Obviously, the way in which the poor quality, not particularly committed team is managed has been a problem for several years. But it's all of these things, I think. Because you could argue that actually, assuming Arsenal are going to win the title, or whoever, their players don't have any real commitment to Arsenal. Ultimately, City players don't have it to City, and if they were in the same position, they would probably have similar attitudes. That's different. I guess there's a generational difference now, because I think I don't know. Again, Graham Roberts to mention again, Gary Mabbott, Steve Perryman, players in our past who were utterly committed to the club, to Tottenham. They're very, very rare. I think you find them at the lower levels in the league and possibly in non-league, but they're very rare in Premiership. Yeah.
Way back, of course, Julie, players were kind of indentured to their teams, weren't they? They were just on contracts and they just, that was it. They didn't move unless, something horrific happened or an enormous, £30,000 bid came in, and they were slaves to their employers who were making all the money. These days, they're freelancers, really, aren't they?
You're absolutely right. It was a lot harder to get a move back in the day. But I mean, then you get a player like Tell. As soon as he arrived from Bayern, he was willing and eager, and he still is. So some players do have that mentality. You mentioned Xavi. So they're not all like Romero. I mean, I'm just over it with Romero, I have to say. I mean, he doesn't give a damn, honestly. And I think his attitude has just infected the whole season. He, almost from the get-go this season, he has been the bad apple. It's ridiculous that he's the captain. He should have had the captaincy taken away from him a long time ago. There are a lot of young players there who would look up to him as a senior player. I'm using quote marks here, which people can't see, but a seasoned international, a world-class player. Well, he might be world-class for Argentina, but he's not world-class for Spurs. But we've already covered that. But yeah, I think he is the one that's at fault. Porro obviously thinks, far more of himself than everybody else does. One stage, Thomas Frank actually called Porro the only elite player that we had, which is when I thought, obviously Frank had gone insane.
I see Porro as a latter-day Butch Wilkins, who has somehow managed to persuade a succession of managers that he's world-class and indispensable. I never got it with Butch. He's a lovely man. I met him.
He was a really nice person.
Lovely man. And I wanted to say to him, look, Butch, you were shit, right? You looked lovely. You ran in a beautiful way, very athletic and gorgeous, but you were useless. You just passed everything sideways and you kept Glenn Hoddle out of the England team. And I'm never going to forgive you. But I couldn't do that because he's a really nice bloke. On the subject of Romero, I've got a tweet here. I've got a couple of others which we'll come to. This is from one of our listeners, Craig, who says, I would strip Romero of the captaincy and make him train away from the first team. The lack of effort in getting back for their second goal is unforgivable. His work rate doesn't scream leader. We need players who fight for the badge and the fans. I don't get a sense he does, which rather aptly sums up what we've all been saying, that he can give his interviews in his dodgy English all he likes and talk about, what a bad result and we're really trying. But I don't think any of us believe him anymore. And here's a bloke who's won the World Cup, who's playing like a mid-level championship player. So it ain't good enough. Now, Barry, I'm not going to address this one to Julie because she'll only give me jip if I do it. Micky Moore, another stellar performance for Rangers, I think, against Aberdeen at the weekend. It begs the question, why the fuck didn't we get him back? Or why the fuck did we let him go in the first place? More to the point, and it leads on to what the hell were we doing in this transfer window? Could we have got him back? We should have. We don't know the terms of the loan agreement. But we were absolutely stripped of first-team players, and Langer and co. did nothing. We can lay the blame at the feet of Romero and Porro, who are, admittedly poor, but not having any backup and having to rely on 12 or 13 blokes for every game. Igor has been dealt a pretty tough hand.
Given their track record, maybe it's not safe to assume that both Micky Moore and Vuskovic were contracts for loan for the whole season. Otherwise, you would have to assume he would have taken them back. Otherwise, they were even more negligent than they thought. That said, Langer, his line at the end of the January transfer window was, we don't take short-term options. We'll go in the summer. We've got our targets. We tried for Semenyo, didn't have him, but we're not going to go for stopgaps. I mean, the lack of awareness of the scale of the problem at that stage identifies him as completely out of his depth, because we could all see it. You're not in a position to turn your back on, who's the guy, Lookman. We were offered him, weren't we? But didn't want him because he didn't fit age profile wise. He's late 20s or whatever, sell on value, etc. Look, Spurs are on course to lose 300 million quid if we get relegated.
Yeah.
And the idea that they were so complacent to think that relegation wasn't an issue, that we should gamble on 40 million here or whatever, or getting loan deals. I mean, this idea that we were decimated by injuries, the squad wasn't performing, and we effectively, if you swap Brennan for Gallagher, we brought in Sousa. I was talking earlier about Lehman's Brothers scale negligence. That's what you're talking about here. I mean, I could not believe for Langer to say, Cameron, we got a master plan. We got our big deals in the summer when they're available. We don't mess around in January. We're not short term here. There was a fucking emergency. Deal with it. Take the hit. I mean, the mind boggles. Sorry, I did say earlier and I'd moved on from anger to kind of grief and sadness. No, there's not, clearly the anger's still there. But yeah, that is just mental. Absolutely mental and unforgivable. And him and Vinay, that in itself, that January transfer window with the plight we were in, we could all see it was falling off a cliff. And they did nothing. They did nothing. That's it. Show them the P45s on that alone.
It's hard to know whether that's short-sightedness, naivety, ignorance, meanness. It could be all of those things. My sense is I don't think Langer gets it, and Vinay absolutely doesn't get it. And we don't want to spend money on a loan signing. We don't want to bring a bloke in for 40 mil who just stopgap. They don't get it. They don't get it. By the way, I just wanted to say this about Micky, who's had a stellar season now, and apparently he's the best player ever to come into the Scottish Premiership. I know it was so funny how the Scottish or the Rangers journalists were desperately trying to talk him into staying forever. And you'll forgive me for some of my Scottish accent here, but they're going, Micky, hey, the fans here, they love you, don't you? They love you. And so he's going, well, yeah, they do, and I love the fans. I love the fans back. They're great. They're really nice. Yeah. Yeah, but Micky, what about? Have you had a conversation about moving up here? Maybe, permanently. Well, there's going to be conversations in the summer when I get back to Spurs, and it was, yeah, look, Micky, are you gonna fucking join us or not, you twat? And they're almost getting infuriated with him because he was being diplomatic. And of course, what Micky was really saying was, no, I'm not coming up here. I want to play I want to play in the Premier League. And it was quite, and I think this is going to be the theme now for the next 7 games. Micky Moore, who's probably way too good, isn't he, for the Scottish Premier League? He's way too good for us, by the way. But he does have a future in the Premier League because he's an extraordinarily gifted footballer. Sorry, Barry's so stunned by my brilliant Scottish accent, he's saying nothing, or at least he's frozen on screen. There he is. No, he's come back to life. I can't hear you, Barry. You've got your mic off. What is the matter with that Scottish twat? He's got his mic off. I'll have to be him for the rest of the show. So, Kev, it's all gone tits up, hasn't it, here? Here's some more tweets. Here's some more tweets for us. Here's one that said, why are any of you surprised by this performance, though? Stupid parades won't make the players or the manager better. No pattern of play, no creativity, no defensive discipline, one shot on target as of 77 minutes. All the parade did was make us look stupid. I like that one. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. Here's another one. Here was someone trying to be funny and just completely missing the mark and being tasteless at the same time. He said, Spurs were so bad on Sunday that even Tudor's dad gave up. Do you imagine sitting there, writing that tweet and thinking, that's going to get 1 million likes, that one. You stupid fucking idiot. Now, here's another one. Julie, you'll know this. Who'd have thought Spurs would be trying to emulate FC Magdeburg in having won a UEFA trophy, the Cup Winners' Cup, in 73-74 and being relegated the following season? All right, I'll tell you what we need to do. Barry's back with us. Hi, Barry.
Hi, Frank. Sorry, yeah, I was messing about there. Can you, you're able to edit all that out?
I can edit you out for, if need be. So I was just impersonating you, and I don't think our listeners would have known the difference. Have you got a Room 101 for us?
Collectively Tottenham Hotspur Football Club at the moment. Football generally, I'd ban all talk of football because I just can't face handling talking about it at the moment. I got a pal at work, his Rangers guy, and I'm like, can we just not even talk about football? The subject collectively at the moment, because it's triggering just Spurs, even not talking about Spurs. I'm done with football. Well, except I'm not. I know I'm not, but I want to be done with it. So yeah, I can't offer you anything more original than that.
It probably reflects again how most of us feel. You'd like to stick them in room 101 and never have to think about them again. But sadly, for the next 3 weeks, a lot will be happening, I hope, on the managerial front.
Yes.
Well, look, you go off and get your daughter. Thank you for joining us today. We'll carry on with a few bits and bobs at our end. Kev, what have you got for room 101 for us?
I'd like to put in the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, please.
Wow.
Because I don't like it, really. It's a fabulous piece of architecture, and they're the greatest stadium in the world, and blah blah blah. But I don't. It doesn't feel like home, and the old one felt like home. And this is probably just the moaning of a very old git looking back on the good old days, and tied into the fact that we're playing so badly and looking so dreadful. But the fact that it's even called the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, how long are they waiting before they do something about the naming rights? And when they do name it, it's going to be something awful like the bloody Emirates or an equivalent. It feels symbolic, I guess, of just a wider disillusionment. From a practical point of view, it's been part of our decline on the field, I think, because the focus financially and psychologically has been from the board and from the owners on the stadium. The stadium's more important. Football's taken a back seat. It's also, like I said, it doesn't feel yet like home. There's been 2 or 3 matches this year where the atmosphere's been great, actually, but the majority, it hasn't. I don't know. I've no idea if in the old stadium, if we'd been playing as badly as this, would it feel different? I'm not sure. But I guess I grew up with various, sort of incarnations of the old stadium. And I guess I'm still nostalgic for it. But like I said, I'm nostalgic for what Tottenham was. I'm nostalgic for what we were as a football club. And we don't feel like a football club. And this just I don't know. I blame Tony Blair, but I won't go into that.
Well, of course, that's a whole other podcast. And you're taking it out on a blameless, inanimate object, and I'm not sure. Well, look, listen, it's your choice. I quite like the stadium, to be honest with you. Unfortunately, so do visiting teams. Hence our absolutely appalling record there. Julie, what have you got for us for room 101?
The suggestion that Harry Redknapp and Tim Sherwood take over for the rest of the season, which is, a superb suggestion. A 79-year-old and a fatuous, gibbering idiot will lead us to glory, or keep us in the Premier League. So that's my room 101.
That is the most apt description of Tim Sherwood I've ever heard. A fatuous, gibbering idiot. Beautiful, beautiful. I've just got this. Look, we had this business of someone, I think it was an AI job, putting out this, what Tottenham is about, and pre the Nottingham Forest game. And I couldn't help but read it in Churchillian voice. And as I did the voice of Churchill for a Twix ice cream advert, I feel qualified. Tottenham Hotspur means everything to us. It always has. And then it goes on with altogether, always. And I thought, look, the thing about this is this. Look, it's okay putting out a little, a G-up for all the fans, but do we really need it? Look, Gary, for many, many years, has been telling me that I have to stand up and shout and sing and give my all for Spurs. Well, that's not how I watch football. And I think after 56 years, I'm entitled to watch and support my team any way I bloody well please. And so you shout if you want to. And, I still feel unity with my team, or not as much as I used to. I still feel unity with my fellow fans, and we're all behind the club. I don't have to demonstrate anything to anyone else. No one should be gatekeeping this for us. There are no rules about it. So, lots of people don't even go to the games. Doesn't mean you're any less of a supporter or any less worthy. So, I don't want to be told how to support the club. I want to put that piece of AI bullshit into room 101. It achieved nothing. And if anything, it heaped pressure on the players. A lot of them stuck it on their Instagrams and thought, oh, shit, now, hang on, they're all behind us now. We've really got to perform. Pressure, boys, pressure. And, of course, it killed them. Likewise, that parade or whatever it was to greet the coach as it came in, like it was the cup final. That, to me, is fucking stupid. But if you want to do it, do it. That's your prerogative, okay? But don't tell me I'm wrong for not being there. All right, there we are. I've waffled on quite enough. So have we got any final closing thoughts? Because we've got 3 weeks to somehow fill over, to where there are no matches to get miserable about. Kev, the key bit is going to be, is Igor going to get the chop? And if so, it won't be the fatuous gibbering idiot or the 79-year-old geezer. There's talk about someone called Adolf Hitler. I mean, Christ almighty, we are really pushing the envelope of credibility here. Although, knowing our lot, knowing Vinay, he'll appoint Adolf.
I think Tudor does have to go. My worry is that they'll do a levy and do the populist thing and try and keep all the fans on board and possibly go for the Harry and Tim double. I wouldn't mind if Harry was around with someone else, but I would mind if it was Tim Sherwood. If I had to put money on it, I think they will go for someone with a history at the club because I think they want to keep us on side. And that might not be the best thing to do. But I think he has to go.
I tell you what, fatuous, gibbering idiot or not, I would rather have him there than Ryan Mason.
No, sorry, no, not even. If they do go for anything, I think they will go for Adolf, who likes to be known as Addy, and frankly, I'm not surprised, who was sacked from Monaco in October after a poor run of results. So he sounds just our guy.
He absolutely does. I had a load of stats that I was going to bore you with. Now, look, we all know that we've got a record low point since 1914 or something. And I don't know, but here's just on this apposite. Across spells with Juventus and current club Tottenham, Igor Tudor hasn't won any of his last 10 league matches. 4 draws and 6 defeats, which is the longest run of his career. So Addy would kind of emulate that, I feel. So we might be replacing one waste of space with another. And nothing would surprise me with our hierarchy. Well, there we are. Look, our thanks to Barry Graham, who's fucked off, to Julie, to Julie Welch, and to Kevin Acott. I'm Simon Lipson. Do give us a follow on social media at Nice One Cyril Pod. We've got a website, www.niceonecyrilpodcast.co.uk. And why not subscribe or follow the podcast on the platform of your choosing and never miss an episode. We're so grateful to all of our listeners for tuning in and engaging with us and giving us lovely reviews and what have you. And we're growing the pod and keep it coming. Thank you so much. There we are. That's it. Come on, you Spurs.
Nice one, Cyril.